Hi, everyone. Oh, this is so exciting. We have many people joining us right now. I'm going to give it just like another minute for people to log in for Zoom to get caught up, and then we'll get started. All right, is everyone seeing these slides that I have up? Perfect. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's the afternoon for everyone across the country, so hopefully I have that one right. I'm Jenny Huang, Outreach Manager at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities Get It Back campaign. Wow, that is such a mouthful. So I don't need to tell you all how important $3,200 is, right? That's the total that someone can get if they qualify for all 3 stimulus checks. I know that for myself, like if someone could have given me that money at a time when I really needed it, it would have been such a blessing in my life. And so that's really what we are going to be talking about today, is making sure that everyone gets their stimulus checks this year, especially those in really hard to reach populations who are facing a lot of barriers. Before I get into the content, just wanted to cover a couple housekeeping points. So this is being recorded today, and in hopefully less than a week, depending on what our workload looks like this week, you will be getting the slides and the notes. So don't worry about taking any notes. If you have any questions, just chat them into the Q&A or in the chat box, and we will see them. And yeah, just let us know if there's anything you need as we are going through our content today. So for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, Roxy Keynes and I, Jenny Huang, work at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. We are a nonpartisan research and policy institute, and we focus on federal and state policies designed to reduce poverty and inequality in equitable and effective ways, focusing on budget and tax policy, which is why we are so jazzed about the stimulus checks. I see that someone has raised their hand. If you could chat into the Q&A if you need help, that would help us. Thank you. And Roxy, maybe you could send a message to those folks. Thank you. Specifically, Roxy and I work at the Get It Back campaign, which is a national effort to connect workers to important tax benefits, including the stimulus checks this year. We, on a regular tax season, focus on promoting the earned income tax credit, child tax credit, free tax prep, and other tax benefits. And we work with a network of diverse partners to do this work. So today we've got an exciting agenda, exciting for me at least. We're going to be talking about the third stimulus checks and eligibility and what the general outreach timeline needs to look like this year. We'll talk about the communities that are at risk of missing out on receiving the stimulus checks. We'll touch a little bit on the child tax credit expansion, the portal, and what the advanced payments are going to look like. And then we're going to talk about what the outreach can really look like for you all. So we have an exciting toolkit that is coming out. We should have that live by the end of the day today or tomorrow. And then we do have a couple ways to really support people one-on-one. So we have Ray Pilarski from Code for America talking about how to help people get their payments. And then Courtney O'Reilly from Tax Help Colorado talking about her on-the-ground outreach. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions. And so to get us started, we would really love to hear more from you all. So If you can go into the chat box and select all panelists and participants, we would love if you could answer the following questions. So 1, where are you joining us from? And 2, what is one thing you have done or are going to do for stimulus check outreach? And while you all are putting those answers into the box, oh, this is so exciting. I love seeing where everyone is coming from. Roxy is going to take it away and talk about the importance of these stimulus checks. And Roxy, I think I should have given you remote control access. So hopefully you'll be able to run through the slides yourself, or I can click through them.
Okay, thank you so much, Jenny, and welcome everyone. It is fun to see your locations flying by, and I certainly will take a closer look after the webinar. So to get started, we want to take some time to provide a little background and context. We underwent a huge outreach initiative for stimulus checks last year. So some of you may want to know, why is stimulus outreach important now and why is it needed now? So about 8 million people who were eligible for the first round of stimulus payments under the CARES Act did not receive them, according to estimates from the US Treasury. And now that there are 3 rounds of stimulus payments, there's even more money at stake. As Jenny mentioned, when you total up the amounts for all 3 stimulus payments, that is worth $3,200. And for some, it could be more, because this is the amount for individuals. If people have dependents, have children, then they could be eligible for even more money. So it's really critical to help make sure that people can get this money, especially given the economic impact of the pandemic. This is a tremendous resource that can help many people. One of the benefits of the stimulus payments as well is that it is available to people regardless of income. There's no minimum income requirement, unlike other tax benefits. So this brings in a lot of people who don't typically file a tax return. And that is the reason why outreach is needed, because people don't know about it and don't know how to actually file the tax return. Okay, so oops, let's see if we can get back. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the third stimulus payments issued opened up eligibility for new populations as well. This is another reason why outreach is needed. So even if some people weren't eligible for the first and second stimulus payments, they may be eligible for this third round. So there are 2 primary expansions to the third stimulus payments. First is that there was an expanded requirement around the taxpayer identification number. And so this expansion means that there are more families with immigrants who may qualify for the third stimulus check. Specifically, if there are people, a household where there are people married filing jointly, and one person has a social security number and one person has an individual taxpayer identification number, commonly known as an ITIN, under the initial rules for the first and second stimulus payment, that entire household could not get the checks at all. Under the third stimulus payment, the household would be able to get the stimulus payment for the person with the social security number, and also claim the stimulus for other people with social security numbers. So this expansion means that at least 2.2 million children who were previously left out of the first and second round of payments are now eligible. It also means that The third stimulus check also changed the requirement for dependents. For the first and second rounds, dependents had to be under the age of 17. And for the third stimulus check, dependents can be any age. So this means that there are households who have adults that are dependents that can also qualify for the additional $1,400. If we can go to the next slide. So this is a chart that gives you a side-by-side comparison of the stimulus checks and how the rules have changed and what is the current eligibility guidelines. They are a little different for families that are in the military. They're expanded a little bit more fully, and then for families that are not in the military. So this chart is on our website and the link is included. This presentation, you'll get the slides, you'll get the recording as well, so you'll be able to link to it directly. So we wanted to really focus on harder to reach populations, as this is a group that is more at risk of missing out on the stimulus payments. So when we talk about harder to reach populations, who are we referring to? So we are referring to people with very low incomes or no income at all. Also, as we just explored, families with immigrants, as well as families that include older dependents, are newly eligible. People who lack secure housing are also at risk of missing out on the payments. People who are incarcerated and people without internet access. And those last three groups are populations that had challenges with the first round of stimulus payments. And so we know that even though we don't have specific data on those populations, we know that there are still a large number of people that need support and need outreach. Additionally, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color are groups that are may have challenges in accessing the stimulus payments, so a specific outreach can be beneficial. And adults not raising children in the home. This includes a range of people. So it can include younger adults, maybe people that are in their early 20s who previously were claimed as a dependent and are not claimed now. And also older people who are not eligible for Social Security benefits, so they didn't get their stimulus automatically, and they may not work consistently, and so may not have a tax filing requirement. So why are these people harder to reach? Some of the reasons I've shared already: not normally required to file a tax return. Some people who didn't submit their information through the non-filer portal to get the first stimulus check, now they have to file a tax return because there is not a non-filer portal that is available right now. Additionally, some people just may not know that they're eligible, especially as eligibility has expanded with the different rounds of stimulus payments. For people who did actually use the non-filer tool or file a tax return last year, they may have had some missing information on their return, and so the return may not have been fully processed. And so they may not realize that they need additional Social Security number information or mailing address information. If the IRS tried to send a payment to an address that was on a tax return and that person has moved, or if they listed a bank account that is no longer open, then that information, the payment would be returned to the IRS, and there is action that the filer would need to take to actually receive their payment. They need to update their bank account information or their mailing address. And finally, lack of knowledge of free resources to file taxes. So we'll be sure to share some information on how to actually reach harder to reach populations later. So when we're looking at outreach, we're looking at it in phases. There is a lot of outreach that's needed, and it's needed not just in the immediate, but in 3 phases. So the first phase of outreach is right now. Now to May 17th, we want to encourage people to file a tax return. And this will allow them to get them the 3rd stimulus check, as well as claim the 1st and 2nd check as a recovery rebate credit. So filing a 2020 tax return will also set people up, could set people up to receive other tax benefits if they're eligible. Specifically, the child tax credit. Some people may be eligible to receive advanced child tax credit payments later this year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Phase 2 of outreach is from May to October 15th. So while May 17th is the end of the active tax filing season, it's not the end, not the last opportunity to file a 2020 tax return. People can continue to file returns through October 15th, which is the date for the extended tax filing season. People who don't owe taxes will not have any penalties to file late. So that is an outreach opportunity and message. Some people think if they file late, they're going to be charged or there'll be fees, and that is not true if they do not owe taxes. So the 3rd phase of outreach is really getting prepared and ready for next tax filing season. From December 2021 through April 15th, 2022, people can file their 2021 tax return. And on the 2021 tax return, people will be able to claim the 3rd stimulus check as the recovery rebate credit if they missed it. So the opportunity is not going to be completely gone, and we do want to encourage people to get it now. Also, by filing a 2021 tax return, people will be able to benefit from expansions to tax credits under the American Rescue Plan. This includes expansions to the child tax credit, the child and dependent care tax credit, and the earned income tax credit. The earned income tax credit expansion specifically opens up eligibility to include more people who may not have ever filed taxes before. So specific outreach will be needed, and we will be sharing more information with you later in the year to help you develop your strategy and approach for outreach around these other tax credits. And so we wanted to share just a little bit of information about the child tax credit advance payments. We know that there are a lot of questions and excitement, and there's also a lot that we do not know. So we want to walk through just briefly what we do know and what we don't know. So some of the things that we know, just to make sure everyone is on the same page, the child tax credit is expanded for tax year 2021 only. The expansion makes the child tax credit worth $3,000 per child for children ages 6 to 17 through 17, and it is worth $3,600 for children under 6. The IRS will issue advance payments worth half the amount of this expanded child tax credit during July to December of this year. People will have to file a 2021 tax return to get the rest of their credit. There will also be a portal available where people can manage certain aspects of their payment. So the American Rescue Plan legislation requires that through the portal, people are able to update their marital status, their income, and the number of children that they have. People can also use the portal to opt out of advance payments. So this is what we know for sure right now. What we don't know is the frequency of advance payments. Recently, the IRS commissioner mentioned that he believes that they are set up to start monthly payments in July. This is not definite, though, right now, so it's still to be determined. Will they be monthly, bi-monthly, or issued on another schedule? Additionally, we don't know the method for payment distribution and the ability to make changes to it. So for people who have an active and current account for direct deposit, that is most likely to be the way that they will receive the payment. For others, if payments will be issued as paper checks, or will they be issued as debit cards? We don't know that yet. We also don't know if someone has a bank account and they want to change it to a different one, or if someone wants to request a debit card specifically, we don't know if there will be the ability to request that. We also don't know the how eligibility for advance payments will be assessed. So if someone, for example, files a tax return to get the third stimulus check, and they don't have any income, so they aren't eligible to claim the child tax credit on their 2020 tax return, will the IRS use their tax information to see that they are eligible for the child tax credit and go ahead and issue the advance payment? We don't know if they'll do that. We also don't know what the cutoff date is that the IRS will use to assess 2020 eligibility for people who are claiming the child tax credit on their 2020 return. So I mentioned earlier that May 17th is not the last date to file a tax return. If someone filed a return in July, for example, and they don't owe taxes and they are eligible for the child tax credit, would they be set up to get advance payments? We don't know. So there's a lot that we still don't know. We will be sharing more information as it is known and be working with you as you are looking to develop your outreach plans. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jenny.
Thanks, Roxy, for that great introduction on reaching hard to reach populations and why this is important. So hopefully throughout the next little section, you'll see how the materials that we are building are really focused on this hard to reach population, right? Like we're thinking about what the barriers are and how to reach them. So these are just a few of the ways that you can start thinking about how to reach these populations because a lot of folks don't have internet access. I know that was something that came up a lot in the registration questions too, is like how to reach people who don't have the internet, especially like given just how strange and virtual this year has been. Well, some of the ways you can do that are to distribute informational mailers or flyers. We do have some of those in the toolkit. To text and call people and use email blasts, because a lot of folks who don't have a computer at home and who may not have access to the internet still have a cell phone that they use. For people who are online, you can post on social media. And you can also do other things like run PSAs, provide on-the-ground support, which Ray and Courtney will talk about a little bit later, and advertise in local newspapers, radio stations, and for focusing on immigrants, really making sure to use multilingual outreach materials. So, such a hard time clicking to the slide sometimes. So we have created an outreach stimulus check outreach toolkit that we're very excited about. This link is not live yet, but it will be soon. So if you go to eitcoutreach.org/coronavirus, we will have a landing page that links to this toolkit, and we'll keep on adding resources as we go. So one thing I want to say before I jump into all the things that we are going to be sharing with you all in the toolkit is just how excited I am to see where all of you all are joining us from. I'm seeing in the chat people from California and Pennsylvania and DC and Maryland and just like all over the country. So really excited about the enthusiasm for stimulus check outreach. As you all know, like outreach really happens on the local level. And so you all really are key as local organizations and people on the ground to make sure that people who haven't gotten their stimulus checks are going to get them, especially like during this pandemic when people need it so badly. So as I'm going through the materials that we've created, I really want you all to be thinking about how can you use the materials that we've created in your outreach? Like, what are the connections that you already have in your community? How can you focus on in-person outreach given just like the barriers that already exist that we've talked about? And yeah, how can you support the community? And you'll see here that we really have two sets of outreach materials available already for you. So the first set focuses on media outreach, and the second focuses on kind of reaching individuals. So what I have here is some of the key messaging that we really want to focus on for reaching individuals. On the left is the flyer that we're providing. So this flyer is great because so in the bottom, in the dark blue, where there's a little bit of space, that's where you can customize this flyer and put in your local information. This flyer is also available in 5 languages. So we thought it was really important to make sure that we're not just putting our materials together in English. We have everything translated into Spanish, Arabic, Vietnamese, Chinese, and French. And we chose those languages after extensive conversations with different partners across the country, doing a bit of research on what languages immigrants in this country are speaking, and that's how we landed on those 5 languages. We know, of course, that it would be great if we could provide 20 different translations, but that wasn't possible with our current capacity. Hopefully in the future, we can have more translations done. But really what I wanted to focus here was the 4, I guess 5 key messages that we really wanted all of our outreach materials to focus on. So first is you may be eligible for up to 3 stimulus checks worth $3,200. So that's a big chunk of money, right? We wanted to emphasize that like this is money that you need and it's there for you. The second point we wanted to emphasize was that filing taxes can help you claim them and other tax refunds, right? So we want to lay the ground for other kinds of outreach that are going to come later in this year, including child tax credit outreach. And so we want to make sure that even as people are trying to get their stimulus checks now, that they know that filing taxes now has benefits beyond getting the $3,200. There's the child tax credit, there's the expanded EITC, earned income tax credit, and it's really important to be filing taxes now. The third message that is so important, especially to mixed status families, so families where not everyone has the same tax status, is that if anyone in your household has a social security number, file taxes by May 17th to get your money, right? So I think sometimes, especially as advocates, as people working in tax-related fields, we get really hung up on all of the different eligibility questions that people may have, and we say, "Oh, well, if you're married, filing jointly, and you're da 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 da." Well, I mean, as a person in one of those families, that's really overwhelming. So we wanted to simplify the message here and to say, anyone. If anyone in your household has an SSN, file taxes. Don't worry about the eligibility, just file taxes. And then related to that, of course, people, there's definitely a fear around filing taxes for immigrants. And so it's important to also emphasize that this will not have immigration-related consequences. So it doesn't fall under the public charge ruling. And then finally, in all of your materials, we don't have it on this particular flyer just because we want to make sure that you are putting in the information that makes sense for your local organization. But really, here's how you can take action. All right, and so in this in this next slide, you'll see some of the sample graphics. These are the social media graphics that we've created, but just to give you an idea of like what some of these materials are going to look like. So these are some of the visuals that we have. We wanted to make sure we were showing different kinds of people in the graphics. So if you, once the toolkits are out, you'll see that for each language, you have different visuals included in them. And as always, these are customizable. So we have some text included with the social media, but for all of them, we really want to make sure that you know that like you should be putting the information that makes sense for your community, right? Like we don't know what works in your community, you do. So the other thing that we really wanted to emphasize in this particular toolkit was the importance of reaching out to local media. So as you probably saw from the previous slide, we have a media guide, talking points for media, a press release template, sample social media, or sample media pitch, sorry, and a sample radio PSA script. And so we wanted to include these because we really thought that these were just crucially important avenues to reaching hard to reach populations. So, right, we're all connected to different kinds of media and communities, and we just thought it was really important for everyone doing outreach to be thinking about who the important messengers are in your community. So I know for myself, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and my parents were both Chinese immigrants, and we lived in a very Chinese community. We lived right by Chinatown when I was a kid. And I know from my experiences growing up, we got a lot of our information from the local Chinese church that we attended. My parents read the local Chinese newspaper that was coming out. And there were like certain restaurants that were really a hub in our community, right? And so like Roxy and I, our campaign, we can't tell you who those messengers are, but think about like, how can you take the information that we're putting together and like figure out who those messengers are in your community? Yeah, because we know like even like everyone is talking to someone. There's a community for everyone. And so just thinking about who those messengers are. So here were just some of the key messages we included in our media toolkit. You'll be able to see those soon, but first is just emphasizing how many more people are now eligible for these stimulus checks. So as Roxy mentioned before, the eligibility has opened up for the third stimulus check. And so that really is a huge opportunity here. And just to clarify, I did see in the chat, the difference between the first and second stimulus check and the third stimulus check in terms of eligibility are only the tax filer and the tax filers. So in the past, you could only get the stimulus check for your dependent if you or your spouse had an SSN. For the third stimulus check, even if a couple married filing jointly both have ITINs, if they have a dependent who is an SSN, they can still get the stimulus check for that dependent. So just to clarify that point. Another point to include in any media pitches that you're doing are that stimulus checks really help keep money flowing through your communities, right? And then making sure to have data that makes it like specific to your area. So in your state or wherever you are, residents don't need a social security number to claim their household stimulus check and other refunds. Again, that's speaking to the expanded eligibility. And then, as we said before, filing taxes will not affect your immigration status. And then the last point to always drive home is free tax assistance is available to help your area's residents claim their stimulus checks and other refunds. And so if you go to the toolkit page, you'll find the toolkit linked. And then we also have a lot of FAQs on our website, including on the first, second, and third stimulus check, as well as how to get your stimulus check if you didn't in the past year. And with that, I'm very excited to turn it over to Ray Pilarski from Code for America. who is a senior program director, who will be talking about how you can do more on the ground in-person support. Doesn't have to be in person. And I just want to make a quick note that I am keeping track of the questions, and we'll get to most of those at the end. If we don't get to your question, we will email you afterwards. But yeah, with that, Ray, take it away.
Great, thanks, Jenny. Hi, everybody. Really happy to be here today. And thanks to Roxy and Jenny for the invitation, for hosting this webinar, for facilitating this conversation. It's really important to have these conversations as we prepare for the end of this tax season and beyond. So my name is Ray Pilarski. I'm the Senior Program Manager on the Get Your Refund team at Code for America. And I have the privilege of sharing a little bit about our investor model, which we call Get Your Refund Navigators. So first, I want to give you a little bit of background and context around Code for America and the Get Your Refund pilot, so that you can understand more about who we are, what we do, and how we got involved in the VITA space. Code for America is a nonprofit organization that partners with government to strengthen the delivery of public services through human-centered design and technology. We're currently working on SNAP in California, benefits integrations in multiple states, criminal records clearance, and now we're working on tax benefits. We chose to work on tax benefits because, as we all know, the EITC is the biggest benefit for workers and provides flexible cash that allows people to address their own most painful problems. We see that there's a dignity in cash that feels different to clients than other forms of support. And of course, now stimulus payments have created an even bigger opportunity for us to get people the cash that they need. As we all know, this is money, as was just mentioned by Jenny, that can be reinvested in our communities. That's why these credits exist in the first place. They can help pay for essential needs like childcare, transportation. They can be invested in education or business. And that is true for this client who's pictured here, who received a refund of close to $9,000 that is being invested back into her business. But we needed to know why people who are eligible for these credits don't file. So we conducted user research in 2019 in California and in Colorado with Courtney's team. And we found some clear patterns in why eligible folks don't file. We found that people often don't think they have a reason to file, or that they've experienced some emotional hardship that has interrupted their life and made filing a return less of a priority. We found that folks were overwhelmed with trying to understand the processes and consequences around filing, or they weren't able to find trustworthy and affordable help. When they were able to find that trustworthy and affordable help, it wasn't always available when and where they needed it. What we found is that outreach is extremely important in reaching hard to reach populations, but it's not enough to overcome these additional challenges that surfaced in our research. And so, as Jenny alluded to, the next step is to take action, and that's what we were looking to create. So we took all of that research and all of these stories that we heard, and we used it to inform our approach. We knew that any service that we created needed to be free and trustworthy, and these things are not mutually exclusive. People expressed greater trust in free tax help that was associated with nonprofit or government. It needed to be clarifying. People needed to be able to ask questions about their specific situation and get answers that give them the confidence and clarity that they needed to feel comfortable to file. It also needed to be thorough, especially for people who haven't been filing for several years or have other complicated tax situations like self-employment. And finally, it needed to be accessible, available to people whenever they're ready and wherever they are. Oops. Perhaps unsurprisingly, what all this research led us to is that VITA ticks all of these boxes. You'll see a familiar face in this photo. VITA provides trustworthy, clarifying, and thorough service, has an accuracy rate of 93%, which is higher than paid preparers. So of course, VITA best meets client needs, but VITA also struggles to meet the demand. And this is especially true now with so many brick and mortar locations still being shuttered due to the pandemic. So we felt that digital services could help VITA to expand and serve more people. So we decided to pilot a fully online intake and case management system with VITA partners in the 2020 tax season, and getyourrefund.org was born. So right now, Get Your Refund has several services that are designed to meet diverse client needs. We have a VITA location finder for those sites that do still remain open. We have digital valet VITA, which allows clients to meet with a volunteer in person to answer questions about their tax situation, have their tax documents scanned, and then have their return prepared remotely. And then we have our full service digital intake, which allows clients to answer questions and submit documents online completely remotely, and have their return prepared remotely as well. We give people access to DIY with Help, which is free tax preparation software with support for folks who get stuck. And this option allows us to route some clients towards self-prep so that we can prioritize high touch and high need service for those who need that. And then we offer additional service routing. We have live chat support available for help with stimulus questions, other tax-related issues, and any referrals necessary to related services. Our navigator model is used in both the digital valet VITA option and the full service digital intake. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to focus on our full service digital intake because it's easier to illustrate for you. But first, I want to talk a little bit about our 2021 pilot. This season, we launched a custom case management system built specifically for the VITA process, which we call the Hub. We brought on more than 100 partners across 40 states who are actually able to serve clients across the country. And we currently have more than 7,000 users in the Hub working with clients. Those users have filed 51,000 returns thus far, bringing back $178 million in refunds and credit. But there's so much more to do. We're also conducting research to learn how to effectively reach non-filers, overcome the document burden, respond to additional stimulus payments if and when they're available, and scale high-quality virtual support. So as we are working with clients and conducting our research, we're learning a lot about what clients need to successfully have their returns filed to claim these important credits and payments. And this is where Get Your Refund navigators really come in, because clients need help completing that intake process. It can be tough for folks to locate documents. It takes a certain level of trust in order to complete an online process like this. And we found that even when folks have everything that they need, it can be difficult for them to navigate the online questionnaire or upload their documents. So having navigators available and often embedded in trusted organizations helps us to maintain that connection and personal touch that VITA is known for, and helps to build trust around the entire process. But to accomplish this, of course, we need many more volunteers to reach more clients. So I want to talk a little bit about the partnerships that we are currently building. The first is an outreach partnership, which focuses on outreach efforts to families in both the EITC and stimulus participation gap. We're able to issue unique URLs to our site to track where folks are coming from, and if needed, route them to a specific tax team as well. And then we also have, navigator partnerships. So this is sort of the next step in partnership with Get Your Refund. It allows clients to get help with the online intake process in person or over the phone. And as I mentioned, navigators are a critical part of ensuring that all eligible clients can take advantage of Get Your Refund. And this particular volunteer role only requires about 3 to 4 hours of training. It does not require any tax certification. So I'm going to walk you through the duties of the Get Your Refund Navigator just to illustrate the online intake process. As I mentioned before, navigators assist clients during the online intake in getyourrefund.org. They also help clients to securely upload the required documents. After that online intake is complete, the client's case moves on to the tax team in the steps detailed to the right of this red box. The case created for each client is reviewed by an intake specialist who also completes a review call with the client. Then the return is prepared by the preparer before being handed off to the quality reviewer, who completes a final review with the client over the phone as well. Then they send the return to the client for e-signature, or in the case of digital valet VITA, the client can choose to return to the original site to pick up their return. Once the client signs that return, it can be transmitted for them. So we ask that clients bring all necessary documents when meeting, either in person or remotely with a navigator. That includes photo ID for the client and their spouse, if applicable, social security cards or acceptable alternatives for everyone listed on the return, all income documents, letters from the IRS, bank account information if they would like direct deposit, and last year's return, which is recommended and very helpful, but not required. When getting started, the navigator opens getyourrefund.org, which is available on any device, including desktop, mobile, or tablet. So it is possible for a navigator organization to provide their own equipment to assist folks. It's important to note that the client can, at any time during the online intake process, receive live chat support by clicking on the chat icon at the bottom of the screen. Then the system will assess the client's needs. It asks which tax years will need to be filed, and it screens for VITA eligibility as well. Once that is complete, the client is routed to a specific site. The client can be routed directly to a tax team if a unique URL is used. Otherwise, the client is routed based on state. And in that case, the site to which they're routed may be local or based in another state. And that depends on which partners are available in that client's location. As I mentioned before, we have VITA partners in 40 states, but they're able to assist clients across the country. Next, the client enters their contact information. A working phone number would be required for the intake interview for the fully digital online intake, as well as that quality review call, which are both done, of course, over the phone. The client can also choose to receive updates via text or email. And as I mentioned, the client has the option to e-sign their finished return once it's prepared. And that link is also sent through text or email. After entering the contact information, the client reviews all of the consent forms that are required for VITA, including Form 14446, which is necessary for any virtual VITA model. We've also included the consent to use, consent to disclose, relational office, and global carry forward. And clients can choose to grant or not grant consent to any of those before moving forward. And then they answer the simplified questions that populate responses in the intake sheet that is used by the tax team. These questions have helpful descriptions and instructions to provide more context and make it easier for clients to move through the questionnaire. Next, the client is asked to gather the documents that they indicated they may need by answering those questions. While navigators can offer assistance throughout the entire intake process, this is where their help is really critical. When clients drop off during online intake, it typically occurs around the document upload stage. So a little help with this process can go a long way towards the completion of a client's tax return and their receipt of those important credits and payments. Next, the client is asked to verify their identity. Typically, this is done at an in-person VITA site by looking at the documents that the client has provided and checking their photo ID against the person that you see in front of you. But here we ask that folks upload a picture of their ID documents and a selfie holding their photo ID. This process and the entire pilot has been reviewed and approved by IRS spec at the national level. Then the client is asked to securely upload their tax documents. This is more easily accomplished with a cell phone, as the system will allow the client to take a picture of their with their camera that is directly uploaded to their case. So they don't have to save any pictures of their documents. That will automatically go into the case that's created in the hub. It's also important to note here that all information and documents entered into Get Your Refund are encrypted in transit as well as at rest. And then the client is asked some final questions, including what time they prefer to receive a phone call, where they would like their refund sent, and some additional demographic questions. And finally, the client is able to submit their application to the tax team. At this point, a case is created in the hub for the tax team to work on, and the client then receives a confirmation message with some additional information via text or email. They can expect a call from their tax team within 3 to 5 business days to confirm information and move them on to the next step in the process. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a very quick overview of that process. So I would welcome questions in the chat here or sent to me directly after the webinar. If you'd like, you can reach me with the email address that is currently on your screen.
Thanks so much, Ray. Next, we'll have Courtney talking about how she connects clients to tax filing through partnerships. And Courtney, if you'll give me 1 second, I'm going to give you the remote access.
All the control. All right, great. Thank you so much. It's really easy coming, well, not easy, coming after Ray, but she did a lot of the hard work of describing the overall process. And so I'm just going to be talking a little bit about how we implemented that with Tax Help Colorado. So my name is Courtney O'Reilly. I'm the director of Tax Help Colorado. We are a statewide VITA organization here in Colorado. And like many VITA programs, coming into this tax season, we knew our capacity for in-person assistance was going to be pretty limited. And so we started thinking through how to best utilize new types of partnerships to help families access free filing resources, and also knowing that a number of non-filers still had not been able to file either the non-filer form or their 2020 tax return. So how do we get this service into their hands, knowing the limitations that have already been brought up in this presentation? So, you know, and many of these things have already been addressed, but just want to touch on why we know many vulnerable families were going to be unable to access the service. So as we're all aware of the digital divide that keeps families from accessing remote services like this, we knew that was going to be even more so for some of the populations we targeted. There was also a fear about the trust in the service. We were asking people to upload some of their most sensitive information to a website that they weren't necessarily familiar with. And so we knew we were going to need help from our partners to create that human face and connect it to the services that we normally provide in person. The other major hurdle are some of the documents that we asked from taxpayers. With some experience from this last summer, we knew that there was going to be some challenges in helping people that didn't have access to a social security card, all of their tax documents, all of those things. And so we really wanted to make sure any of our partners we were working with had some of the resources to help families get connected to those documents. And so when we were thinking about this assister model, we really knew that we needed to provide access to technology, not just technology, but also there is a digital literacy that is needed in order to complete this application. So assisting with that tech support, similar to what Ray was already saying, we needed people to help them upload a picture. Last summer, before we had this model down, getting calls from taxpayers asking what it meant to upload something and trying to describe that over the phone is not helpful for them and can be just frustrating and completely turn them away from actually getting this resource. So we knew we needed that on the ground tech support. The other bit is the guidance on the filing requirements. Why do they need to see a picture of my social security card? Well, I didn't make that much money. Why do I need to give them all of my tax documents? All of those things. And then, as I had already mentioned, just building trust in the service and making sure that there is a human-to-human connection rather than the number of times I've heard taxpayers talk about, you're the first human I've talked to in a while, all I get are machines. And so I think that's just an incredibly important part of this assister model. And so when we came into this tax season, we sort of had a couple of ideas about how we wanted to reach these new types of partnerships. So the first one was casting a wide net. We knew this was kind of an opportunity for us to reach new partners who may have not been connected to VITA, EITC awareness, all of those things before. And so we wanted to broaden our coalition of partners helping in this way. We were extremely fortunate. We partner with kind of our sister organization, Get Ahead Colorado, that offers education and outreach about the earned income credit and child tax credits. And over the past 30 years, they've created a network of hundreds of partners. And so we leverage that network to help promote sort of this opportunity and to encourage people to participate in a webinar that we hosted. I would encourage anybody who's trying to do this from the VITA perspective, keep the initial webinar fairly short, just explaining here's the idea, here's the problem we're having, and how can we help utilize you to be part of that solution. In that webinar, we wanted to also make sure there was a multitude of ways that somebody could partner with us, where we weren't expecting everybody to be ingrained in every bit of this, but we wanted to make sure that there was options available. So from just doing general outreach about get your refund and free tax filing, stimulus checks, all of those things, to actually being able to look people up in the hub software that Ray mentioned to track them. So if somebody came back in and had a question and said, I haven't heard anything, they could give some of that follow-up information for them. So there's different levels depending on what that partner was most comfortable with. And the big thing was stressing that you don't have to be a tax person to help in this way. I think normally when I'm going to partners, there's a lot of hesitation of like, I don't want to mess with taxes. That's just a little too scary and threatening for us. I'm not tax trained, and nor do I have any desire to be tax certified. While that breaks my heart, and we would love to have more people get certified in tax preparation to help, we wanted to make this not committed to tax preparation and really just committed to that in-person technical support rather than the tax support that we could do on the back end. So these were some of our goals in recruiting partners. And from this, we brought together a small but mighty new group of people, or new group of organizations that came together to really make a big difference in their community. Many of them were folks that helped with housing assistance for families. They were resource centers. They were out in rural communities that didn't have any access to VITA programs that normally there might be an in-person option for. And we were really excited about this, and we think this is going to be a really great way to keep people connected to the tax filing benefits going forward. And so just kind of some of the support that we offered is obviously training. And with this, we wanted to be really clear about what were those basic filing requirements. This is one of the major hurdles of getting people this access, and we didn't want somebody to lose or get frustrated 3 steps in only to realize they needed to go back to step 1 to get what we need in order to help them. The other bit was really helping them understand the process and expectations. So making sure they understood how long was it going to be till they got a call? How should they expect to get messages from us? If they choose a text message and they have a landline, making sure that that's pretty clear that that's not going to be something that we can utilize to get a hold of them. Also going over what that Get Your Refund application looks like. I basically stole Code for America's presentation to teach them how and what those steps are that Ray just presented. And then also how to utilize the hub so that they can help either move people into a new section, upload new documents that we realized we needed after the fact, all those different things. Then there's also communication resources, so making sure they had our Get Your Refund flyer that explained the process for families to take home. We also created small little flyers with a QR code that had our unique URL to ensure that they actually came to our hub, so that if they had questions, we could actually answer those questions. And just again, some pretty high level follow-up information of what they could expect. And then for those who were really providing that all levels of assistance, we did offer a micro grant of $500 to try and help in some way, say thank you. We know you're probably putting in way more resources than this, but this is what we can do to recognize that, that support. And then also providing their partner assistance during tax season. So if they have questions, I know I have a couple of emails that have come in since this presentation began of some of our sister sites asking for a status update on somebody, for asking, what do we do next with this person? How do we move forward? So just making sure that they had answers available to them. The other big thing was making sure they had access to some useful resources to help clients get connected to the materials they need. So how to, and if, I don't know if these slides are going to be shared, but these have links to how they can request a replacement Social Security card. Oftentimes it gets lost in for people who don't have stable housing, or years have gone by and they haven't filed a tax return. This is probably our most common request. The other one is how to get a wage and income transcript. So if they've moved to different places and they don't quite remember how many jobs they had in a certain tax year, this is the best way for them to get that information so that we know we're filing an accurate return. Also, just keep in mind that for many states with state income tax, we also will need a transcript from that state to know what was withheld for any state income. The other one, and this has become a issue in the last few years, is retrieving an identity protection PIN number, or PIN. And this is just something that, as we see identity theft skyrocketing across the United States, this is one of the ways that the IRS has tried to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, a lot of taxpayers lose it, or they didn't receive the letter, and so this is one way for them to retrieve that. The other one, and I saw this actually in part of the chat conversation, we wanted to make sure, especially for populations that move, that they were going to have access to the refund, even if it was going to take a little bit longer for it to process. We already heard that anybody with a recovery rebate credit on their tax return was going to take a little bit longer for the IRS to process that request. And so we wanted to make sure that they had access to that refund whenever it came. Focus Card is a prepaid debit card that we've partnered with. It's our second year now. And this card will come in 10 days. So regardless of when that refund from the IRS would get there, they would know they had it. And that's it for me. Sorry, quick and fast. And yeah, happy to answer any questions or be of any assistance. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Courtney. We have a few minutes now to go over any questions that folks have. I think Roxy has been monitoring the chat, so maybe you could help us facilitate that.
Absolutely. So one question that's come in is, with the homeless population, a lot of them may not have their W-2s or may not have any income. Would this program still be able to help them? I believe this question is directed to Ray about Get Your Refund.
Yeah, so for folks who don't have any income, they can absolutely still use Get Your Refund. We have quite a few clients that are coming in now that are really only filing for that recovery rebate credit and don't have any other reason to file. So the quick answer is yes, it should be available to folks. If they're missing documents that have been issued to them that would be required to file a return, there would be some additional steps to assist them in getting that information. But overall, they can absolutely take advantage of the service.
Okay, thank you. This next question is about the technical aspect of filing a tax return through VITA. Is there any information yet for situations in which non-filers who have no income at all to include can get their refund or their rebate? VITA sites were told last year to put $1 in income, but what about now if someone is filing for the sole purpose of getting their children on record? Courtney, can you answer that?
Yeah, so the question is specifically if their household information changed. So they might have already received the recovery or the first and second stimulus check, but now they need to receive, make sure the IRS has updated information for the third. Is that what I'm hearing, Roxy?
Actually, so I tried to paraphrase it because it was a little long. If they haven't gotten the first or second, so they need to get the first and second as the recovery rebate credit. And they don't actually owe taxes or have income.
Perfect. Yeah. So they would just need to file a 2020 tax return with the recovery rebate credit on it. So we no longer have to do that sort of workaround where we put $1 of interest, because now it's going to calculate a refund that is due to that taxpayer. So if they haven't received their full first and second stimulus payments, that's something that we can, or any VITA program can help them file. If they have received the total or the full first and second refund, I know we've had some people come in and say they haven't received the third refund yet or something like that. You can't file a return with that at this point. And as much as that $1 of interest worked last year, that has not been necessarily approved for this year. So we're still waiting to see if there's additional information or guidance from the IRS about how to handle any of those. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. So there is another question specifically around people who file taxes with ITINs. If someone with an ITIN number already filed 2020 taxes, do they need to go back and do anything additional to receive the payments for their citizen child, or will they get it automatically? I believe this is referring to the advanced child tax credit payments for this year. I'm assuming that that's what we're talking about for this question. And so my understanding is that if they've already filed the 2020 tax return, well, this is where there's a question. So if the person is eligible for the child tax credit now, and they claim the child for the child tax credit, then they're likely to be set to get the payments. But if someone filed a 2020 tax return and is not eligible to claim the child tax credit currently, and they have their child listed on the tax return, we still don't know if the IRS will set them up so that they'll be eligible for advance payments. So there's nothing else for the person to do right now. We just don't know for sure if they would get the advance payments. So another question is something that I think, Jenny, you may be able to help answer. This question is around resources to help people, to help self-employed people keep track of their earnings. I'm trying to find the exact question again.
I started typing an answer. That's why I think it disappeared. Yeah. So for self-employment tax resources, we actually have an entire portion of our website. So if you go to ridesharetaxhelp.com, we have many resources on calculating income, tracking business expenses, the actual tax filing process, and that website does include a couple resources on just tracking different parts of it. I don't remember if the question was focused on, well, what part of the process the question was focused on, but all of the resources are on ridesharetaxhelp.com, and you can look through the landing page has a list of everything. So Yeah, definitely check it out.
Okay, excellent. And there was a question in the chat that I responded to, and I think it would be helpful just, Ray, for you to respond, is getyourrefund.org available in Spanish?
It is available in Spanish, yes. And we are currently assessing the possibility of including additional languages in the near future, but currently it's available in English and Spanish.
Great, thank you. Another question is for the deadline to file, does the usual rule around someone is able to claim a tax refund for up to 3 previous years, does that apply here when we're talking about getting the stimulus payments as the recovery rebate credit? And to our understanding, it does apply. So if someone doesn't get the first and second stimulus payments as the recovery rebate credit on their 2020 tax return, then they will have an opportunity to claim it for 2 more years in the future. So our understanding is that it does still apply. So there's more time to do outreach if people miss out. So we'll see if there are just a few more questions before we prepare to wrap up. One question, will VITA continue virtual tax assistance? If so, should they partner with homeless shelters? I think this depends on where they're located. But is there anything else, Courtney, that you want to say about like partnering with homeless shelters?
Yeah, I mean, and I would also say for the VITA question, it's obviously going to depend on each VITA program to decide what's best for their model and their process. But I do think Get Your Refund was created, was thought up and created before the pandemic and before the need for a remote option, because we thought this was really going to be the way to reach new families who haven't filed a tax return or who could not access VITA previously. And so I obviously really hope VITA programs continue offering the service. And I do think for working with homeless shelters and nonprofits who are dedicated to helping families access housing resources is going to be really important in a continuing way, regardless of stimulus checks, just because we are finding many taxpayers who are filing because of the stimulus checks are also realizing they qualify for these other credits. And so again, just trying to identify those hard to reach filers who actually have a benefit in filing, but may not be required. Long answer for a really short yes. Continue doing this work.
Fantastic. So thank you so much again, Courtney and Ray, for your sharing and for the work that you're doing. Thank you everyone for joining. If we did not answer your question, if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, we will follow up and share the information with you via email. As we close, we just want to remind you of a few things. One is that we know that there's a lot of questions around the child tax credit specifically and other expansions to tax credits. So we will be gathering again. We'll have more times for you to learn and for us to share resources with you. So please look out for that. Specifically, one opportunity that's coming up that we want to share with you is that some of our colleagues who work with our state team are holding a webinar on the 26th on how states can help support outreach and helping to make sure that families with immigrants can take advantage of the benefits available through the American Rescue Plan. So it is geared towards states. Some of you all may still be interested, so we shared that information with you. And so please feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us here at eitcoutreach.org if you have any other questions. And thank you again. We hope that some of you all will reach out to Ray to become navigators/assisters with Get Your Refund, and that you've received great inspiration from Courtney's example of the work that she's doing, and you can find ways to adapt it for your communities. And if you need any additional help, please feel free to reach out.